He saved her from the flames, but she has a huge secret. The warehouse exploded in a crown of flame just as Evan Carter kicked through the loading dock door. Heat slammed into him like a living thing, hungry, furious, reaching for his throat. Through the roar and the smoke, he heard it, a scream, raw and terrified, cutting through the inferno like a blade. He plunged deeper into the belly of the fire. His radio crackled. "Ash, get out! The structure's compromised!" He tore the radio from his jacket and let it fall. The beam of his flashlight carved through black smoke, revealing overturned crates, shattered glass, and then, there, a figure huddled against the far wall, arms wrapped around something, silhouetted against a wall of flame. A woman. "Hey!" Evan's voice was muffled behind his mask. "I'm coming to you, don't move!" She looked up. Even through the haze, he could see her eyes, wide, dark, filled with something that wasn't just fear, something that looked like guilt. "I can't leave it," she choked out, clutching what looked like a leather-bound book to her chest. "I can't. You're going to die if you stay here." Above them, a support beam groaned. Evan didn't think. He closed the distance in 3 strides, wrapped one arm around her waist and hauled her to her feet. She fought him, actually fought him, twisting in his grip, trying to go back for something else in the flames. "Let me go! There's more! There's nothing worth your life!" The beam gave way with a shriek of tortured metal. Evan threw them both forward, shielding her body with his as debris rained down behind them. They hit the ground hard, rolled through smoke and ash. And then, miracle of miracles, they were through the door, tumbling out into the night where the air was cool and clean and tasted like salt from the nearby ocean. Evan ripped off his mask, gasping. Beside him, the woman coughed violently, still clutching that damn book like it was the only thing tethering her to Earth. His crew descended on them immediately. Blankets, oxygen, questions. But when Chief Moreno crouched down to ask her name, ask her what the hell she was doing in Rafe Hale's warehouse at midnight, the woman looked straight at Evan, only at Evan, and whispered, "Please don't make me answer that." Her eyes were the color of stormy seas, and in that moment, Evan Carter made the first of many mistakes where this woman was concerned. He said, "Okay, join our inner circle of story lovers. Subscribe to get early access and exclusives. You're the reason we create." The fire station at 3 in the morning smelled like burnt coffee and old courage. Evan sat across from the woman in the break room, watching her hands shake as she held a paper cup of water she hadn't touched. She hadn't let go of the sketchbook. It sat in her lap now, soot-stained and singed at the edges. "Mara," she'd finally said when he'd asked her name for the 3rd time. "Mara Linwood." Mara, he tested the name. It fit her somehow, soft but carrying weight, like the pull of the tide. "You want to tell me what you were doing in that warehouse?" She looked up at him, and for a moment, he forgot why he was asking. Forgot everything except the way firelight still seemed to dance in her eyes, even though they were miles from the blaze now. "I was looking for something," she said quietly. "Did you find it?" Her fingers tightened on the sketchbook. "I found enough." Evan leaned back, studied her. She was beautiful in the way storms were beautiful. Dangerous, unpredictable, impossible to look away from. Dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders. Paint stains on her hands. A small scar above her left eyebrow that made him wonder what other stories her skin could tell. "This is the 4th fire in 6 weeks," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "All of them suspicious. All of them in buildings owned by people with connections to the old shipping industry. Rafe Hale's warehouse makes 5. I know. The police are going to want to talk to you." "I know that too." She finally took a sip of water, grimaced. "Are you going to make me?" "I should. But," Evan ran a hand through his ash-darkened hair, "but I have a feeling if I push you right now, you'll run. And then I won't be able to help you when whatever you're running from catches up." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition, like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone to see her that clearly. "You don't know me," she whispered. "No," he agreed, "but I'd like to." The words hung between them, heavier than smoke. Outside, sirens wailed as another engine returned from the scene. Inside, in this small room that smelled like coffee and secrets, Mara Linwood looked at Evan Carter like he was the first safe thing she'd seen in a very long time. "I'm an artist," she said finally. "I paint, I sketch, I, I document things." "What kind of things?" She opened the sketchbook with trembling fingers. The pages were filled with drawings, haunting, detailed, beautiful, buildings, faces, and fires. So many fires. "I've been watching," she said, "trying to understand, trying to figure out who's doing this before—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "Before it's too late." Evan's pulse quickened. "You know who the arsonist is?" "I think so, but I can't prove it. And if I'm wrong—" She looked up at him, and there was such fear in her eyes that it made his chest ache. "If I'm wrong, I've put someone innocent in danger. And if I'm right, if you're right, then the person burning down this town is someone I used to trust with my life." Over the next week, Evan learned 3 things about Mara Linwood. 1, she took her coffee black and her tea with honey, and she only drank the latter when she was trying not to fall apart. 2, she had a studio apartment above the old bookshop on Harbor Street, and every wall was covered in paintings of the ocean. Not peaceful, postcard oceans, but wild, churning seas that looked like they were trying to break free of their frames. 3, she was the kind of beautiful that got under your skin and stayed there, like smoke after a fire, impossible to wash away. He'd started finding excuses to see her. Checking in, he told himself, making sure she was safe, making sure she hadn't disappeared in the night like he suspected she wanted to. But the truth was simpler and more dangerous. He couldn't stop thinking about her. "You're playing with fire, Ash," his partner Rodriguez had said that morning, watching Evan check his phone for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "No pun intended. I'm just making sure she's okay." "Uh-huh. And I'm just a firefighter because I like the uniform." Now standing outside Mara's building with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of wine he'd probably paid too much for, Evan wondered if Rodriguez was right, if he was letting his heart overrule his head, if saving someone once made you responsible for them forever, or if that was just an excuse to see her again. She answered on the second knock, and the sight of her stole his breath all over again. She'd been painting. There was cerulean blue in her hair, cadmium yellow on her collarbone. She wore an oversized sweater that slipped off one shoulder and jeans with holes in the knees. And she looked at him like he was a problem she was trying to solve and a prayer she was afraid to answer. "You didn't have to do this," she said, but she stepped aside to let him in. "I know. I wanted to." Her studio was chaos. Beautiful, inspired chaos. Canvases everywhere. Some finished, most not. Sketches pinned to every available surface. And in the center of it all, an easel with a half-finished painting of the warehouse fire. So vivid and terrifying that Evan could almost feel the heat radiating from the canvas. "Is this how you process it?" he asked quietly. "It's how I understand it." She set down her brush, wiped her hands on a rag that was already more paint than cloth. "Every fire has a story, a reason, a heart. If I can paint it, I can see the pattern. And if I can see the pattern, you can find who's setting them. Maybe." She took the wine bottle from his hands, studied the label. "You brought the good stuff. Seemed like a good stuff kind of night." She smiled then, really smiled, not the cautious half expression she'd been rationing. And it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. They ate on her fire escape, legs dangling over the edge, the ocean stretching dark and infinite before them. The town of Ashford Cove spread out below, its lights like fallen stars, its streets quiet in the way only small coastal towns could be at night. "Tell me about the fire," Mara said softly. "The one that made you become a firefighter." Evan's jaw tightened. It was a story he didn't tell, a memory he kept locked away in the darkest corner of his heart. But something about the way she looked at him, like she already knew his ghosts and was asking permission to hold them, made the words come easier. "I was 17, he said. "House fire. My kid sister was inside. I tried to get to her. Tried so damn hard. But I wasn't trained, didn't have equipment, didn't know what I was doing." By the time the real firefighters arrived, he stopped, swallowed the memory like broken glass. She didn't make it. Mara's hand found his in the darkness. Her fingers were paint-stained and warm and steady. Her name was Lily, he continued. She was 12. She liked astronomy and terrible pop music and those chocolate chip cookies that come in the blue package. And I couldn't save her. So you became someone who could save everyone else. I try. Doesn't always work. But you try. Mara squeezed his hand. That's what matters. That's what makes you... What? She turned to look at him, and in the moonlight, with the ocean wind tangling her hair, she was the most heartbreakingly beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Good, she whispered. It makes you good, Evan Carter, and I haven't met many good people in my life. You're one of them. You don't know that. I do. He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, let his fingers linger against her cheek. I knew it the moment you fought me to go back into that fire. You weren't trying to escape. You were trying to save something. That's who you are. Her breath caught. In the distance, a foghorn sounded, low and lonely. I should tell you, she said, about why I was there, about what I know. But if I tell you the truth, her voice cracked. You might not look at me the same way. Try me. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then, instead of words, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, testing, like she expected him to pull away. But Evan Carter had been drowning since the moment he'd pulled her from that fire, and this kiss was oxygen, was light, was everything he'd been too afraid to want. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her back, and it was like falling and flying at the same time, like standing in the eye of a hurricane and feeling perfectly, impossibly safe. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mara rested her forehead against his. The arsonist, she whispered. He knows I'm looking for him. And Evan, I think he knows about you too. The next fire came 3 days later. Evan was off duty, asleep in his apartment above the tackle shop, when his phone exploded with calls. He was dressed and moving before he was fully awake, muscle memory taking over, carrying him down the stairs and into his truck. The address made his blood run cold. Harbor Street, the bookshop, Mara. He drove like a man possessed, breaking every speed limit, running 2 red lights. The town was awake now, people spilling from their homes in robes and confusion, following the orange glow that painted the sky. The bookshop was fully engulfed by the time he arrived. Flames poured from the upper windows, from Mara's apartment, like the building itself was screaming. Evan was out of the truck before it fully stopped, was pulling on his gear, was moving toward the inferno when Rodriguez grabbed his arm. Ash, wait for backup. She's in there. You don't know that. But Evan was already running, already crashing through the bookshop's door, already letting the smoke swallow him whole. The shop was a maze of burning shelves and falling books, pages curling like dying butterflies. He took the stairs 2 at a time, feeling the structure groan beneath him, feeling time running out with every heartbeat. Mara! His voice was raw. Mara! A sound, faint, muffled, coming from her apartment door. He hit it with his shoulder once, twice, and on the 3rd impact, it gave way. Smoke poured out, thick and choking, and through it he saw her, crouched by the window, trying to open it, trying to breathe. She turned at the sound of his entrance, and the relief on her face nearly broke him. I knew you'd come, she gasped. He crossed to her in 2 strides, wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. We have to go. Now. My paintings! Mara, no! But she was already moving, grabbing canvases, stuffing sketches into a bag with shaking hands. Behind them, the ceiling cracked ominously. Leave them! I can't! They're evidence! They're... She looked at him with wild eyes. They're all I have that proves what he's doing. Evan made a split-second decision. He grabbed the bag from her, slung it over his shoulder, and then he scooped Mara into his arms and ran. The building came down behind them like a collapsing star. They made it to the street just as the roof caved in, just as a massive explosion of sparks and ash rose into the night sky like furious angels. Evan set Mara down gently, checked her for injuries with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Are you hurt? Tell me if you're hurt. I'm fine. But tears were streaming down her face, cutting tracks through the soot. He tried to kill me, Evan. He set that fire knowing I was inside. Around them, his crew was setting up, preparing to fight the blaze. Chief Moreno was shouting orders. Neighbors were being evacuated. But all Evan could see was Mara. All he could hear was the terror in her voice. He pulled her close, wrapped her in his arms, and felt her shake apart against his chest. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. I've got you, and I'm not letting go. You have to. This is getting too dangerous. If he's willing to murder me, then he won't stop with just me. Anyone close to me becomes a target. And that means, her voice broke, that means you. I don't care. Well, I do. She pulled back, looked up at him with fierce eyes. I care, Evan. I care so much it terrifies me. I've known you for a week and you've become... She stopped, sucked in a shaking breath. You've become everything, and I won't let him hurt you because of me. Evan cupped her face in his soot-stained hands. Then help me stop him. Show me what you know. Let me protect you properly instead of watching you try to do this alone. She searched his face for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay, but not here. Somewhere safe. My place. Will your crew? My crew will understand. He kissed her forehead gently. Come on. Before someone asks questions, we're not ready to answer. Evan's apartment was small but warm, filled with the comfortable chaos of a life lived honestly. Books stacked on every surface. Photographs of his crew, his family, his lost sister. A kitchen that smelled like coffee and cinnamon. Mara stood in the center of it all, still clutching her bag of rescued art, and looked more lost than she had in the burning building. Sit, Evan said gently. I'll make tea. While the kettle heated, he watched her from the kitchen. She'd placed the bag carefully on his coffee table and was now examining his photographs with quiet intensity. Is this Lily? She asked, holding up a picture of a young girl with Evan's eyes and a gap-toothed smile. Yeah, that was taken about 6 months before. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. She looks like she was trouble. The best kind. Evan brought over 2 mugs of tea, steam rising like gentle ghosts. She would have liked you. What makes you say that? She liked anyone who wasn't boring. And Mara, you're a lot of things. But boring isn't one of them. She accepted the tea, wrapping her hands around the mug like it could anchor her. Then, with a deep breath, she opened her bag and began laying out her work. Sketches, paintings, photographs, maps with locations marked in red. A timeline written in her precise, artistic hand. 5 fires, she began, her voice steadier now, clinical, all within 6 weeks, all targeting buildings connected to the old shipping industry, specifically to companies that worked with Ashford Maritime in the 90s. Evan leaned forward, studying the evidence. Ashford Maritime went bankrupt 20 years ago. Scandal, right? Embezzlement or something? Worse, they were smuggling, using legitimate cargo shipments to move contraband, drugs, weapons, stolen goods. When the investigation started, most of the evidence disappeared. The company folded. The owners scattered. No one was ever prosecuted. And you think these fires are connected to that? I know they are. She pulled out a sketch, a man's face rendered in careful detail. Sharp features, cold eyes, a smile that didn't reach past his lips. This is Marcus Vale. He was the CFO of Ashford Maritime. He disappeared when the company collapsed, and 6 weeks ago, he came back to town. Evan's stomach dropped. You think he's setting the fires? I think he's covering his tracks. Everyone who worked for Ashford Maritime, everyone who knew what they were really doing, they're all potential witnesses. And one by one, their properties are burning. But why now? Why wait 20 years? Mara's hands tightened on her mug. Because 20 years ago, someone double-crossed him. Someone took evidence from Ashford Maritime and hid it. Evidence that could not only prove what the company was doing, but implicate powerful people who were never investigated. She looked up at Evan, and her eyes were full of sorrow. My father was Vale's accountant. He's the one who took the evidence. And 3 weeks ago, he died. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. Vale thinks the evidence is hidden somewhere in town, in buildings your father had access to, in places only I would know to look. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. He's been following me, watching me search, and now that I'm getting close, she gestured to the destroyed bookshop. Now he's trying to stop me permanently. Evan stood, paced to the window, tried to process what he was hearing. Outside, dawn was breaking over Ashford Cove, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that looked too much like fire. "We go to the police," he said finally. "Show them everything. Let them handle it." "With what proof? Sketches? Suspicions? My father's dying words about evidence I can't find?" Mara shook her head. "They'll think I'm paranoid or crazy or—" "Then we find the evidence first." "Evan, that's exactly what Vale wants. He's waiting for me to lead him to it." "Then we don't lead him. We outsmart him." Evan turned from the window, and there was steel in his voice now. The same steel that carried him into burning buildings. "You said your father told you where to look. Where is it?" Mara hesitated. Then slowly she pulled out one more sketch. A building Evan recognized immediately. The old lighthouse at Harrow Point, abandoned for decades, slowly crumbling into the sea. "My father loved that place," she said softly. "When I was little, he'd take me there to paint. He said it was the only place in town where you could see both the sunrise and the sunset. The only place where beginning and ending existed in the same space." Her voice cracked. "The evidence is there, hidden in the keeper's quarters." "I know it is." "Then that's where we go." "It's too dangerous." "Everything about this is dangerous, Mara, but I'm not letting you face it alone." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she set down her tea, crossed the room, and kissed him, hard and desperate, and full of all the things she couldn't say. When they broke apart, she whispered against his lips, "Don't die for me, Evan Carter." "Wasn't planning on it." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise. "We're both making it out of this alive. And when we do," he smiled, "I'm taking you to dinner, a real date, somewhere without fire or death threats." "Despite everything," Mara laughed. "I'll hold you to that." They went to the lighthouse at dusk, when the world was caught between light and dark, when the ocean turned the color of bruised plums and the sky bled crimson. Evan had called in sick to work, a first in his 6 years on the force. He'd packed a bag with flashlights, tools, water. He'd told Rodriguez where he was going, just in case. Just in case meant if they didn't come back. The lighthouse stood at the end of a rocky promontory, surrounded by crashing waves and screaming gulls. It had been majestic once, a beacon for lost ships, a symbol of safety. Now it was a skeleton, paint peeling, windows shattered, the light long since extinguished. "My father proposed to my mother here," Mara said as they approached. "He told me that on my 18th birthday. Said this place represented everything he believed in, that even in the darkest night, there's always light if you know where to look." "Sounds like a good man." "He was. And then he wasn't. And then—" she swallowed hard. "Then he tried to make things right. Too late, maybe. But he tried." The door to the lighthouse hung off its hinges. Inside, the air was thick with salt and decay. Their flashlights carved paths through the darkness, revealing graffiti and bird nests in the slow, patient destruction of time. The keeper's quarters were at the top, a small room with a view of infinity. Evan's light swept across overturned furniture, shattered glass, and there in the corner, a loose floorboard that Mara went to immediately. She knelt, pried it up with shaking hands, and pulled out a weathered metal box. "This is it," she breathed. "This is what my father hid." Evan crouched beside her as she opened it. Inside, files, photographs, ledgers, evidence of 20 years of crime, meticulously documented. Names Evan recognized: town officials, business owners, people who were still powerful, still dangerous. "This is enough," he said. "This is enough to bring them all down. If we can get it to the right people, we will. Come on, let's—" The sound of footsteps on the stairs below froze them both. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Evan's hand went to his phone, but there was no signal here. No way to call for help. They were alone, trapped at the top of a crumbling tower, with someone, something coming for them. Well, a voice called up, smooth and cultured and cold as winter ocean. Isn't this touching? The hero and the artist playing detective. Marcus Vale appeared in the doorway like a nightmare made flesh. He was older than Mara's sketch, grayer, but his eyes were the same, empty of everything except calculation. And in his hand was a gun. You know, Vale continued conversationally, I almost admired your father, Mara. He had principles. Stupid, inconvenient principles, but principles nonetheless. He actually thought he could blackmail me, can you imagine? Thought I'd pay him to keep quiet about sins that are 20 years buried. You killed him. Mara's voice was steady, but Evan could see her trembling. The heart attack wasn't natural. Digitalis, wonderful drug, mimics cardiac arrest perfectly. Vale's smile was a slash of cruelty. He died still believing he was protecting you, still thinking he'd hidden his little treasure where I'd never find it. But all I had to do was wait for his grieving daughter to lead me right to it. Evan shifted, putting himself between Mara and the gun. You're not taking that evidence, and you're not touching her. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Vale's eyes flicked to Evan, dismissed him. The firefighter. The hero. Let me guess. You think you can save her. Think you can carry her out of here, just like you did from my warehouse. If I have to. You won't have the chance. Vale raised the gun, and time seemed to slow. Evan saw Mara move, saw her grab the metal box, saw her swing it at Vale's hand. The gun went off, deafening in the small space, and the bullet tore through wood instead of flesh. Then Evan was moving, tackling Vale, and they went down hard, grappling for the weapon. Vale was stronger than he looked, fueled by decades of rage and desperation. They rolled, crashed into furniture, knocked Evan's flashlight spinning across the floor. Run, Evan shouted at Mara. Get out of here! But she didn't run. She couldn't, because in the chaos, Vale's foot had kicked over a lantern Evan hadn't noticed. An old oil lamp, still half full, and now it was spreading liquid fire across the ancient tinder-dry wood. The lighthouse began to burn. Smoke filled the room immediately. Evan felt Vale's hands around his throat, felt consciousness starting to slip away. And then, crack, something hit Vale hard across the back of the head, and the man went limp. Mara stood over them, holding a piece of broken chair, breathing hard. I'm not losing you, she gasped. Not to him, not to anything. Evan struggled to his feet, grabbed the evidence box and Mara's hand in the same motion. We have to go, now. The fire was spreading faster than should have been possible, eating through the old structure like it had been waiting for this moment. They ran for the stairs, but the way down was already blocked by flames. The window, Mara said, pulling him toward the ocean-facing side. There's a ledge, we can... That's a 30-foot drop into rocks and water. Better than burning. She wasn't wrong. They climbed out onto the narrow ledge, wind whipping their hair, waves crashing far below. Behind them, the lighthouse groaned and shuddered, and Evan could hear sirens in the distance. Someone must have seen the fire, must have called it in. When I say jump, he told Mara, we jump together, aim for the deeper water, away from the rocks. And Mara, he looked at her, this woman who'd crashed into his life like a comet, who'd made him believe in more than just saving people, who'd made him believe in being saved. I love you, in case we don't make it. Tears streaked her face, but she was smiling. We're making it. And I love you too, you ridiculous brave man. Now, the lighthouse exploded behind them in a pillar of flame and fury. They jumped. The fall was endless and instant. Terror and freedom, and then the ocean swallowed them whole. Cold shocked Evan's system. Salt water filled his mouth, and he kicked desperately for the surface, still clutching the evidence box, still reaching for Mara. They broke the surface together, gasping, alive, as the lighthouse collapsed into the sea behind them like a dying star. Above, on the cliff, emergency vehicles were arriving. Below, the current was pulling them toward shore, and between them and the water, Mara was laughing, wild, incredulous, beautiful laughter that sounded like victory. We did it, she gasped. We're alive! We're alive! Evan pulled her close, kissed her hard despite the salt water and smoke, despite everything. Told you, he said. Both of us. Together. 3 months later, Ashford Cove was healing. The evidence had been enough. Vale was in custody, along with 5 other men whose names had been in those files. The scandal had rocked the town, but it had also freed it, lifted a shadow that had been there so long people had forgotten what sunshine felt like. The bookshop was being rebuilt. Mara had a new studio in the art district, with big windows and north light and walls that were already filling with paintings of the ocean. Not stormy seas anymore, but something gentler. Something that looked like hope. And Evan stood in front of that studio now, holding flowers and feeling more nervous than he'd ever felt running into a burning building. Mara opened the door, and the sight of her still stole his breath. Paint in her hair. That smile that made him believe in things like fate and second chances and love that was worth burning for. You're early, she said. Couldn't wait. 4-hour date? She raised an eyebrow. The one you promised me? Dinner without fire or death threats? Actually, he pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, with a stone the color of her eyes. I was thinking we could skip straight to the part where I ask you to marry me. Mara stared at the ring, at him, at the ring again. Evan Carter, she said slowly. We've known each other for 3 months. I know. We nearly died multiple times. I know that too. And you're asking me to marry you. Yes? He smiled, and it was the smile of a man who'd learned that life was too short and too precious to waste on fear. I'm asking you to marry me. Because I knew 3 months ago in that fire station, drinking bad coffee at 3 in the morning. I knew when you kissed me on the fire escape. I knew when you swung that chair at Vale to save my life. And I know now. I love you, Mara Linwood. And I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to face another fire alone. She was crying now, but they were good tears, the kind that came from joy too big to contain. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. And I'm saying yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Like it had been waiting for her, like everything had been waiting for this moment. They kissed in the doorway of her studio with the ocean wind carrying the scent of salt and possibility. With the sun setting over Ashford Cove in shades of gold that looked nothing like fire and everything like the future they were going to build together. Thank you, Mara said later as they sat on her fire escape. Their fire escape now, watching the stars come out over the water. For what? For running into the flames for me. For believing me. For loving me even when I was keeping secrets. Evan laced his fingers through hers, felt the ring catch the starlight. You're worth every risk, every fire, every terrifying moment. He kissed her temple softly. Besides, someone very wise once told me that firefighters save people. And Mara, you saved me right back. She rested her head on his shoulder, and they sat there in comfortable silence. 2 people who'd been forged in fire and found each other in the ashes. Below them, the town slept peacefully. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient dance. And between them, love burned steady and true and bright, a flame that would never go out, a light that would guide them through every darkness yet to come. Because that's what love was, Evan thought. Not the wild, consuming fire of passion, though they had that too, but the steady, faithful burn of a candle in the window. A beacon saying, here is home, here is safety, here is someone who will run into the flames for you and hold your hand in the ashes and help you build something beautiful from the ruins. Evan? Mara murmured sleepily against his shoulder. Yeah? Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter how many fires life throws at us, we'll always walk through them together. He pulled her closer, pressed a kiss to her paint-stained hair, and smiled into the darkness. I promise, he said. Always together, always through the flames, always home. And in the quiet of that coastal night, with the ocean singing its eternal song and the future stretching bright before them, Evan Carter and Mara Linwood held each other close, 2 hearts that had been tested by fire and emerged not burned, but refined, stronger, unbreakable. The ashes of their past had become the foundation of their future, and it was beautiful. Love this story? Smash that like button and subscribe for more.